What would you do if the one person who gave you life stood in front of you and you pretended not to know her?
On a bright visitation day at a boarding school in Lagos, when laughter filled the air and parents arrived with gifts and warm embraces, one simple woman walked through the school gate carrying bananas and freshly made akara in a small woven basket. Her clothes were faded, her slippers worn, but her eyes were shining with pride. She had come to see her daughter. But in front of classmates, whispers and watching eyes, that daughter made a choice that would freeze the entire compound into silence. This is not just a story about pride. It is a story about identity, about love that refuses to give up, and about a moment that changed everything in a heartbeat. Stay with me on Amos Tales Africa, because what happened next did not begin with shouting or noise. It began with a single word that should never have been spoken. And the truth that followed will stay with you long after the story ends. Fortune High School in Lagos was known as a place where children from different homes came together to learn, grow, and dream about their future. Some students came from big houses with shining gates and cars that made loud sounds when they arrived. Others came from small homes where love was big, even if money was small. But inside the school walls, everyone wore the same uniform, slept in the same hostels, and ate the same food in the dining hall. Among the students in Senior Secondary 3 was a girl named Abigail. She was 17 years old and very beautiful. Her skin shone like morning light, and she always walked as if the ground was too ordinary for her feet. Her hair was always neatly braided, and she carried herself in a way that made others turn to look at her. Many students admired her, not only because of how she looked, but because of the stories she told. Abigail loved attention more than anything. She enjoyed when girls gathered around her bed in the hostel at night, listening as she spoke about the big life she claimed to live at home. She talked about a large house with tall white walls and glass windows that touched the ceiling. She described a father who traveled overseas for business and a mother who wore gold bracelets that shined under bright lights. She said they had 2 cars and a driver who opened doors for her whenever she stepped out. Her classmates listened with wide eyes. Some believed her completely. Others were not sure. But they said nothing because Abigail spoke with so much confidence that it was hard to doubt her. She even avoided eating certain school meals, saying she was used to special dishes at home. Whenever students talked about school fees or small struggles, she would smile in a way that made it seem like she could never understand such problems. But the truth was very different. Abigail did not come from a house with tall white walls. She did not have a driver. Her father had left many years ago, and her mother, Adaku, worked very hard in the local market to make sure her daughter could attend school. Their small home stood in a quiet area, far from the busy streets she often described. The roof sometimes made sounds when rain fell, and the walls were simple and plain. Abigail knew the truth very well, but she decided long ago that she did not like it. She did not want anyone to know where she truly came from. She felt that if others discovered her real background, they would laugh at her or treat her differently. So she built a new story, piece by piece, like someone building a tall tower out of thin air. She borrowed fancy hair clips from classmates and returned them quietly later. She spoke about vacations she had never taken. She pretended to receive phone calls from relatives abroad. Every lie made her feel powerful for a short moment, but deep inside there was a small fear growing slowly like a seed in the dark. That fear always became stronger whenever visitation day came close. Visitation day was the one day when parents and guardians were allowed to visit students at school. They came with food, gifts, hugs, and loud laughter. It was a joyful day for most students, but for Abigail, it was a day filled with silent worry. She would lie on her bed at night and think about it. What if her mother came wearing simple clothes? What if she brought local food instead of packaged snacks? What if someone saw them together and began to ask questions? Each time those thoughts entered her mind, she pushed them away. She told herself that she would find a way to handle it. After all, she had handled everything else so far. But deep inside her heart, she knew that one day her two worlds might meet. And when that day came, she had no idea how much it would change her life forever. The morning of visitation day arrived with bright sunshine spreading gently over Fortune High School in Lagos, and the whole compound felt different from every other day. The usual quiet sounds of students preparing for classes were replaced with laughter, excitement, and the sweet smell of different foods warming in the air. Girls hurried to wash their uniforms carefully, making sure their collars were straight and their shoes were clean because they wanted to look good when their parents arrived. Some students stood near the school gate long before the official time, stretching their necks to see which car would enter next. Abigail woke up earlier than most girls in her hostel, but her heart was not light like theirs. While others smiled and talked happily about what their parents might bring, she sat quietly on her bed, pretending to adjust her hair. She tried to look calm, but inside her chest, her heart beat quickly, like a small drum. She had spent many days hoping that maybe her mother would be too busy to come this time, or that something would delay her. She did not want her two worlds to meet in front of everyone. By mid-morning, cars began to enter the school compound one after another. Some were big and shiny, with drivers stepping out first to open the doors. Parents walked in carrying boxes of pizza, cartons of juice, bags of snacks, and wrapped gifts tied with colorful ribbons. Students ran toward them with loud joy, hugging tightly as if they had not seen each other in years. Teachers stood nearby, smiling and greeting the visitors warmly. Abigail forced herself to walk slowly toward the visitation area. She lifted her chin and wore her usual confident smile, the one that made her look like she owned everything around her. A few girls gathered near her and asked playful questions about what her family driver might bring this time. Abigail laughed lightly and said that her mother was probably coming later because she had important things to handle first. She spoke in a relaxed tone, but her eyes kept moving toward the school gate again and again. Then, from a distance, she saw a small figure walking through the gate. It was not a tall man in a suit. It was not a shiny car that stopped with loud pride. It was a woman walking slowly under the warm sun, carrying a small, woven basket carefully balanced on her arm. She wore simple Iroquois clothes that had faded with time. The cloth was clean, but clearly old, and her slippers had been mended more than once. In the basket were bananas, neatly arranged and wrapped in leaves, and a paper bundle filled with fresh akara that still gave off a soft, comforting smell. It was a daku. Her face shone with happiness as her eyes searched for her daughter in the crowd. She had traveled a long distance that morning, waking up before sunrise to prepare the food herself. She had chosen the best bananas she could find at the market and fried the akara carefully so it would still taste warm. As she stepped fully into the compound, she paused for a moment, taking in the big buildings and the groups of students laughing with their families. Her heart was full of pride because her daughter was studying in such a fine school. Abigail felt the air leave her body. For a few seconds, everything around her became quiet in her ears, even though the compound was still full of noise. She watched her mother walking closer, smiling widely, her eyes shining with love and excitement. A few students standing near Abigail also noticed the woman approaching. Some of them looked at the basket in her hands. Others noticed her simple clothes. Adaku finally saw her daughter clearly, and her smile grew even brighter. She lifted her free hand and waved gently, calling out in a warm voice filled with joy. Abigail! And the sound of her name felt heavy in Abigail's heart. Her friends turned toward her quickly, their faces full of curiosity as they waited to see what would happen next. Abigail's mind began to race. She could feel the thin wall of lies she had built around herself starting to shake like something about to fall. Her mother was only a few steps away now, still smiling, still proud, still carrying the basket of bananas and akara, prepared with love, and everyone was watching. Adaku walked closer with slow and careful steps, her tired feet moving gently across the school compound, as if she was afraid to disturb anything beautiful. Her face was glowing with happiness because she had finally found her daughter in the crowd of students. She stretched out her hand warmly, her eyes shining with pride. and called Abigail's name again in a soft but joyful voice. Abigail felt her throat tighten. Her friends were standing very close to her now, watching everything with curious eyes. One of the girls whispered softly, asking if that woman was the driver's assistant or maybe a family helper bringing food. Another girl looked at the simple basket and then looked back at Abigail, waiting for her to explain. Inside Abigail's heart, fear and pride began fighting each other. She could feel the truth standing right in front of her, but she also felt the weight of all the stories she had told. If she accepted her mother now, everything she had built with lies would fall apart. The big house, the cars, the gold bracelets, the overseas trips, all of it would disappear in one moment. Adaku finally reached her. She stood directly in front of Abigail and smiled widely, her eyes filled with deep love that only a mother can carry. She gently placed the basket down and reached forward as if to hug her daughter. "My child, I missed you so much," she said softly. "I brought your favorite akara and sweet bananas. I woke up very early to make them fresh for you." The smell of the warm akara rose into the air. It was the kind of smell that reminded someone of home, of small kitchens filled with care, of simple but honest love. But Abigail did not move forward. Instead, she took one small step backward. Her face changed. The warm expression disappeared and was replaced with a cold and proud look. She folded her arms slowly and forced out a small laugh, the kind of laugh that tried to hide nervousness. "I think you have made a mistake," Abigail said loudly enough for the girls beside her to hear. "I don't know you." The words hung in the air like something heavy. Adaku blinked once, confused, as if she did not understand what she had just heard. She looked around, thinking maybe her daughter was joking. She smiled again, this time more softly. "Abigail, it is me. Your mother," she said gently, her voice still calm. "I came to see you." Abigail's heart was beating fast, but she kept her face strong. She shook her head slowly and stepped even further back. "My mother is not dressed like this," she said with forced boldness. "My family would never send someone like you here." The girls around her gasped quietly. Some of them stared at Adaku's worn Iroquois clothes. Others looked at Abigail with wide eyes, not sure what to think. A small silence began to grow around them as nearby students started paying attention to the strange moment. Adaku's smile slowly faded. Her hands, which had been stretched forward with joy, gently dropped to her sides. She looked carefully at her daughter's face, searching for a sign that this was only a misunderstanding. She saw the same eyes she had looked into since the day Abigail was born. She saw the same small birthmark near her daughter's wrist. There was no mistake. But her daughter was denying her. Adaku did not raise her voice. She did not show anger. Instead, her eyes became softer, filled with something deeper than confusion. It was pain. But it was quiet pain, the kind that does not shout. "My child," she said slowly, almost in a whisper. "I am Adaku. I carried you for 9 months. I have come a long way just to see your face." Abigail felt something twist inside her chest, but pride covered it quickly. She glanced at her friends and saw their shocked expressions. She imagined them laughing behind her back later. She imagined her fake world breaking into pieces. So, she chose her pride again. "I don't know what you are talking about," Abigail said, her voice sharper now. "Please, leave me alone." The words cut through the air in a way that made even the nearby laughter from other families begin to fade. A few teachers who were standing at a distance turned their heads toward the scene, sensing that something was wrong. Adaku stood still for a moment, her eyes resting on her daughter's face as if she was trying to understand how love could be pushed away so easily. She slowly bent down and lifted the basket again, holding it carefully as though it still carried something precious. The akara was still warm, the bananas were still sweet, but the joy she had carried from home was no longer shining in her eyes. And just as the silence grew heavier around them, someone from behind stepped forward, having witnessed everything from the beginning. What that person would say next was something Abigail was not ready to hear. As the heavy silence rested on the small crowd, a calm voice came from behind. "Adaku." The voice was gentle but clear. Everyone slowly turned to see who had spoken. It was Mrs. Adeyemi, one of the senior teachers at Fortune High School. She was known for being kind, but very observant. She had been standing not too far away when the scene began, and she had watched everything quietly without interrupting. Mrs. Adeyemi walked forward slowly, her eyes moving from Abigail to the woman holding the basket. "Adaku, is that really you?" she asked again, her voice filled with surprise. Adaku looked up, confused at first, then her face slowly showed recognition. "Yes, Ma," she replied respectfully. "It is me." The teacher smiled gently. "I almost did not recognize you. It has been many years." The students around began whispering softly. Abigail's heart began to beat faster again, but this time it was not only fear, it was something deeper, something she could not control. Mrs. Adeyemi turned to face the students, then looked at Abigail with a serious but calm expression. "Do you know," she began slowly, "that this woman standing here once worked in this school?" A soft wave of surprise moved through the group. Adaku lowered her eyes, modestly. "Yes," the teacher continued. "Many years ago, before some of you even joined this school, she worked here as a cleaner. She would come very early in the morning before sunrise. She swept the classrooms, cleaned the staff room, and arranged the compound neatly before students arrived." Abigail felt her legs grow weak. The teacher did not stop speaking. "I remember clearly," Mrs. Adeyemi said, her voice steady, "because every time I greeted her, she would speak about her daughter. She would say, 'One day, my child will sit in these classrooms, not as a cleaner's daughter, but as a student.' She worked with hope in her heart." The whispers grew louder, but no one laughed. The mood had changed completely. Mrs. Adeyemi looked at Adaku again, with respect. "After some years, she left this job because she found better work in the market. She told me she needed to earn more money to pay school fees. She said education was the only gift she could truly give her child." Abigail's throat felt dry. She stared at the ground, unable to look at anyone. The teacher's voice softened. "Do you know how difficult it is to clean classrooms all day and still dream big for someone else?" she asked gently. "Do you know how much strength it takes to carry hope when your own hands are tired?" Adaku stood quietly, still holding the basket. She had not complained. She had not defended herself. She had simply come with love. Mrs. Adeyemi then said something that made the entire compound fall silent. When this school was looking for students who needed support to complete their education, it was Adaku who came to me privately. She asked if there was any scholarship or fee reduction program. She did not beg for herself. She asked for her daughter. The air felt heavy. She brought documents. She explained her struggles. She said she did not want her daughter to ever feel small in life. She said she wanted her to stand tall among others. The teacher paused and looked directly at Abigail. "And today, that daughter stands here." The words felt like a mirror placed in front of Abigail's face. Some of the girls who once admired her now looked at her differently, not with mockery, but with quiet understanding. A few of them slowly looked at Adaku with respect. Mrs. Adeyemi stepped closer to Adaku and gently touched her shoulder. "You have done well," she said kindly. "Very well." Adaku's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away with the edge of her worn cloth. She forced a small smile, though her heart had clearly been wounded moments earlier. Abigail could no longer hide behind her fake stories. The world she built with lies had cracked open in front of everyone, not because someone wanted to shame her, but because truth had quietly stepped forward. And now, for the first time, Abigail felt something stronger than pride. It was shame, and it was growing fast inside her heart. The compound was no longer filled with whispers. It was filled with understanding. The noise of happy families nearby seemed far away, as if this small corner of the school had become its own quiet world. Mrs. Adeyemi looked at the students around her and spoke again. Not loudly, but clearly enough for everyone to hear. "You see this woman standing here?" she said gently. "Many people may only see her simple clothes, but I have seen her strength." Adaku shifted slightly, uncomfortable with attention, but she did not interrupt. "There were days," the teacher continued, "when heavy rain fell early in the morning, yet she still arrived before anyone else. Her wrapper would be wet from the rain, but she would smile and say she was grateful for life. After cleaning, she would hurry to the market to sell vegetables and small food items so she could save enough money for school fees." Some students slowly nodded as they listened. They could now imagine the early mornings, the long walks, the tired feet. Mrs. Adeyemi went on carefully, choosing her words with care. "When Abigail was admitted into this school, the fees were not small. I remember Adaku sitting in my office one afternoon. She did not complain. She simply asked if she could pay in parts. She promised she would not fail, and she never did." Adaku's hands tightened slightly around the basket handle, as if she was holding not just food, but years of silent struggle. "She would come every term with little envelopes of money," the teacher continued. "Sometimes the notes were small, sometimes they were folded many times, but they were always complete. She once told me that even if she had to skip buying new clothes for herself, she would make sure her daughter had books." A soft sound escaped from one of the girls standing nearby, almost like a quiet sigh. Mrs. Adeyemi looked at Abigail again, but her eyes were not angry. They were full of meaning. "Your mother never wanted you to feel less than anyone," she said softly. "She told me, I do not want my child to bow her head because of me. I want her to lift it high because of what she will become." Those words hit Abigail deeply. She remembered small moments from her childhood that she had pushed far away. She remembered waking up early and seeing her mother tying her wrapper tightly before leaving for work. She remembered nights when her mother would sit beside a small lantern, counting money carefully and smiling to herself. She remembered how her mother would sometimes say, "One day you will go to a big school." Abigail had always focused on what they did not have. She had never truly looked at what her mother had given. Adaku finally spoke, her voice soft and humble. "I didn't come here to cause trouble," she said gently. "I only came to see my daughter and give her something small from home. I know it is not fancy, but it was made with love." She slowly opened the basket and uncovered the bananas and neatly wrapped akara. The simple food looked ordinary compared to the colorful snack boxes other parents had brought, yet at that moment it felt more valuable than anything else in the compound. As some of the girls who once admired Abigail's stories now looked at Adaku with deep respect. One of them even whispered, "She is strong." Abigail felt her chest tighten. The pride she had held onto for so long now felt heavy and painful. She realized that while she had been busy creating a rich story for herself, her mother had been writing a real story with sweat, sacrifice, and love. The ground beneath her feet felt different. She no longer stood tall with false confidence. She stood still, small in her own thoughts. Her friends were no longer looking at her with admiration. They were looking at her with something else. Not judgment, not laughter, but expectation. They were waiting to see what she would do next. And for the first time in her life, Abigail understood that the most important moment was not about protecting her pride. It was about choosing her heart. Abigail stood there as if the whole world had suddenly become very quiet, even though the school compound was still full of voices and movement. The laughter from other families sounded far away, like an echo from another place. All she could hear clearly was the sound of her own breathing and the soft words her mother had just spoken. For the first time, she truly looked at Adaku. Not as someone she wanted to hide, but as the woman who had carried her, fed her, and worked until her hands were rough, just so she could sit in a classroom and dream of a better future. Abigail's eyes slowly moved from her mother's faded Iroquois clothes to her tired slippers, then to her hands that had grown strong from years of hard work. Those were the same hands that once carried her when she was too small to walk. Memories began to return one after another, like pages of a book she had forgotten to read. She remembered being sick as a little girl and feeling a cool hand on her forehead all night. She remembered her mother saving the biggest piece of meat for her during meals. She remembered hearing her mother say, proudly to neighbors, "My daughter will go far in life." Back then, those words made her feel loved. Now, they made her heart ache. She realized that while she had been trying to impress her classmates with stories of cars and big houses, her mother had been building something far more important. She had been building her future, one sacrifice at a time. Tears slowly gathered in Abigail's eyes, but this time she did not try to stop them. Her pride, which once felt strong like a tall wall, now seemed small and foolish. She understood that she had been afraid of being seen as poor, but in trying to hide her background, she had hidden something far greater. She had hidden the truth of a mother's love. She began to see that wealth was not only about shiny cars or large houses, but about the courage to give your best for someone else without asking for praise. Her mother had never tried to pretend to be anything she was not. She had simply worked hard and loved deeply. The girls around her were still watching, but their faces no longer scared her. What scared her more was the thought of hurting the one person who had never stopped believing in her. She felt a deep weight inside her chest, not because others now knew the truth, but because she knew she had caused pain. She understood that the shame she felt was not about being from a simple home. It was about forgetting where she came from and who had helped her stand. Slowly, Abigail lifted her eyes to meet her mother's. In those eyes, she did not see anger. She did not see rejection. She saw patience, and something even stronger than pride. She saw love that had not disappeared, even after being pushed away. That was the moment Abigail truly understood that she had been rich all along, but she had been looking in the wrong place. And as that realization settled gently into her heart, she knew she could not remain silent any longer. For a few quiet seconds, Abigail and her mother simply looked at each other. And in that silent moment, something inside Abigail finally broke, not in a way that destroyed her, but in a way that opened her heart. The pride she had carried for so long slowly melted away, and the fear of what others would think no longer felt important. What mattered most was standing in front of her, holding a simple basket filled with food made before sunrise, food prepared with hands that had never stopped working for her future. Abigail took one small step forward, and then another, and before she could change her mind, she bent down and held her mother tightly, not caring who was watching or what they might say later. Tears rolled gently down her cheeks as she spoke in a trembling voice that everyone could hear clearly. She told her mother she was sorry for pretending not to know her, sorry for choosing pride over love, and sorry for being ashamed of the very woman who had given her everything she had. Her words were not loud or dramatic, but they were real, and they came from a place deep inside her heart that had finally woken up. The school compound, which had once felt like a stage where she acted out a rich girl's life, now felt like a place where truth was allowed to stand without fear. Adaku held her daughter close and gently wiped her tears, whispering that a mother's love does not disappear because of one mistake. She did not scold her. She did not remind her of the pain. Instead, she spoke softly about how life is not about pretending to be someone else, but about becoming the best version of who you truly are. The students who stood nearby felt something shift inside them too, because they saw that strength does not always wear fine clothes, and greatness does not always arrive in big cars. Sometimes it walks quietly through a school gate, carrying bananas and a kara in a small woven basket. From that day forward, Abigail no longer told stories about things she did not have. She spoke proudly of her mother's hard work and the lessons she had learned. She began to understand that her background was not something to hide, but something to honor, because it was built on sacrifice and hope. The admiration she once chased through lies slowly returned in a different form, not because she pretended to be rich, but because she had the courage to admit the truth. And as the sun began to set over Fortune High School that evening, painting the sky with warm colors, one simple lesson remained clear for everyone who had witnessed the moment. True wealth is not measured by money, clothes, or cars. It is measured by love, respect, and gratitude for the hands that helped you rise. Abigail had almost lost something priceless because of pride, but in choosing humility, she found something far greater than the image she once tried to protect. She found her heart, and in finding it, she finally understood what it truly means to be rich. And so, the noise of that visitation day slowly faded. But the lesson it carried did not fade with it. The school buildings remained the same. The classrooms stood where they had always stood, and life continued as usual. Yet, something deeper had changed. Not only in Abigail's heart, but in the hearts of everyone who witnessed that moment. Sometimes we chase an image of success so hard that we forget the hands that pushed us forward. We polish the outside and hide the roots, not realizing that without those roots, we would not be standing at all. True honor is not found in pretending to be greater than where you came from. It is found in respecting the journey that brought you there. A mother's love does not shine because it is rich. It shines because it is real. And when pride falls away, what remains is something far more powerful than appearance: gratitude. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of someone who has sacrificed quietly for your future, take a moment to appreciate them. And let stories like this continue to speak to your heart. Support Amos Tales Africa by liking this video, sharing it with someone who needs this message, and subscribing so you never miss the next powerful story waiting to unfold. Drop your suggestion in the comment section of what you could do if you were Abigail's mother. Because sometimes the next story you hear